It has been winter for way too long already, so we figured it was high time we got back with some good old-fashioned British road test action. And to kick that off, our friends at Honda have dropped us this Africa Twin Adventure Sports DCT ES BG LG LGBT, something like that. It's their fancy pants, all new, more touring-oriented adventure touring bike, and it looks as awesome as the Africa Twin always has. Before we go out and ride it, I want to talk through some of the details on this bike. There is a ton of stuff to cover. What's interesting is Honda has taken the Africa Twin, which was quite an off-road biased adventure bike, or at least it was in their original marketing and in the fact that it had a 21-inch front wheel and big travel suspension. As the market's changed, as everyone's pushing towards the extreme off-road side, Honda's kind of just subtly stepped out to one side and gone, hey, you know what? We're going to go back the other way. So we've gone for 19-inch front wheel, they've gone for reducing the suspension travel, they've gone for making a bike that has more performance on the road and yeah, can still capably go on some gravel trails and a little bit further afield if you're really serious. That goes against everything I like about adventure bikes. I love going gnarly off-road, so this was clearly not a bike made for me, but I'm determined to get my head around it and I'm determined to enjoy it. Let's look into the details of the bike. DCT. If you don't know what DCT is, you've not been paying attention to Honda stuff for a good few years. It's a dual clutch transmission. It is basically an automatic bike. It has gears, it goes up and down gears, but you don't have to do it. You just open the throttle and go. Where the clutch should be, there's a ominous looking gap. There is a rear brake, like a parking brake lever, which is deliberately set so you can't accidentally pull it and use it as a clutch. And apart from that, you just get on and ride it. There's fully automatic mode, there's sport mode, which makes it a little bit more revvy, means it hangs onto gears more. And there's also two buttons for changing up and changing down, so you can put it into a fully manual mode. Now DCT is, again, something some people love, some people don't. I wouldn't buy it on my own bike, but it is a fascinating system, and previous generation Africa Twins, it's always been really effective. So I'm looking forward to trying it out with the new increased horsepower version and seeing how we get on. Now elsewhere on the bike, Honda are very proud of the amount of tech they've put into it. This is the top of the line one. This is just around £17,500, so it's the premium Africa Twin. It has got electronic suspension, it has got ABS, it has got the DCT, it's also got an Apple CarPlay system, it's got cruise control. The electronics keep piling up and up and up. But out of all that, the one that is the most interesting is Apple CarPlay, because I know how my phone works, so therefore I know how this dash works. That for me is a no-brainer. And if you're not Apple, if you're Android, it has Android Auto in there as well. So I'm really excited to give that a go and see if it's as good as I find it when you use it in the Bike World van, driving across country to pick things up. Right, enough waffle. It's got smaller wheels, less travel, more horsepower. Let's go and test all those things out in the only way I know how, by jumping massive hills. We are on full road tyres and it is greasy down here. But actually, there's a few things that make the Africa Twin pretty good in this situation. One is a decent riding position, easy, not in an awkward shape, not having to push or pull or wrench on anything. And two, that DCT is actually pretty good. For all my slight uncertainties about it, it's very, very smooth. Actually, it's very forgiving when you're riding on something slippery like this. It's good. I'm still confused by not having a clutch lever, but I like it. And on top of that, it's just so well balanced, this bike. They have done that very, very well. It's a big bike, there's no getting around that, but the balance of it at slow speed is good. And that means that you kind of don't worry too much about the weight. It never feels like it's going to catch you off guard. And again, one of those tricks that used to be done quite well by earlier GSs is it looks massive. When you stand next to it, you think, how on earth am I going to ride that? But actually the seat height is pretty low. I mean, and it's narrow between your legs, so I can get my feet down pretty easy. So again, you get all the nice big comfy weather protection and big bike benefits, but it's not horrendous to be stood up on and not horrendous to be getting your feet down on. Again, I left the Africa Twin on road tyres this time. We've ridden Africa Twins off-road a lot. Reference the video where we had to tow the Transit out of the woods using a pair of Africa Twins right now. But we've done some good hard off-road on an Africa Twin. I wanted to ride one kind of more in the touring guise, especially this DCT one, Adventure Sport, with all the fancy Apple CarPlay and stuff. To me, it feels like it wants to be a a comfortable touring bike that can do a gravel road or two. It doesn't feel like it wants to be a let's jump off massive ledges and charge through the woods at 90 mile an hour bike. The DCT is something that I found really interesting. You definitely have to learn the system. You have to learn when it's going to change gear, how it's going to change gear. If you just get on it and want to bumble around, it's faultless. You just get on and open the throttle and ride off. Yeah, if you want to start doing more exciting stuff with this, charging corners a bit harder, lifting the front wheel over crests, that sort of thing, you have to learn what the DCT is going to do and when it's going to shift and how it's going to shift. I've found myself actually tending to ride it in the normal automatic mode rather than the sport mode, which hangs on to gears a bit longer. And then when I want a gear to do something interesting, I just then tap the two manual shifters, up or down, whichever I want, and force a gear change. And then that lets me do whatever it is I'm doing, and then it goes back to automatic afterwards. That's actually been quite a good way of using it. Have you ridden a DCT bike yet? It's takes some getting used to. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think you have got to give it a bit of time to learn the system. The problem is you've taken away one of your controls, so everyone who's used to using the clutch to control their speed, to do U-turns, do slow control, pop wheelies, suddenly that clutch is gone and you have to do everything using the throttle. And you know, to a degree I replaced the clutch with the back brake. When you suss it out, it's actually an incredible system. It's really smooth, and initially my biggest thing is I couldn't do U-turns nicely. I couldn't do a nice quite tight U-turn. I couldn't get my head around that. I've had a week or two now of mucking around on it and I've sussed it out. It's all about the back brake and trusting the throttle, because it doesn't suddenly jump, it doesn't skid, it's very smooth. So once you build a bit of faith in it, yeah, you can U-turn in a really tight space, which I think then starts to be easier than using a real clutch. I like it. Would I buy one on my own bike? No, I like a clutch. I like doing things with my clutch, and I like that extra lever for control, and I don't like not having it. But I do like the DCT system. It is very good, and for the right person, it's an awesome bit of kit. In a lot of ways, this new Africa Twin is exactly what an Africa Twin should be, because it feels to me like a brand new version of my old Africa Twin. It's a bit faster, it's got way more tech obviously, but it keeps what was good about the old Africa Twin. It's capable of everything, easy to ride, got a decent amount of character from the engine. It's not a bland, boring thing, it's just good at everything. It's never going to set the world on fire, it's never the most exciting bike on the planet, it's just a really capable motorcycle at doing a bit of everything and putting a smile on your face while it does it. And that's that. I've called this bike Dave. Dave seems right for the Africa Twin. It's not excelling at anything, it's just decent, dependable. And I know that sounds like I'm kind of backhandedly hating on it, but I'm not. It just doesn't do anything to excess. If it was a human being, it would brush its teeth most of the time. It would live in quite a nice house. It would have a reasonable job with decent pay, and it'd probably get drunk once or twice a year and then not drink so much after that. That's probably my best analogy for this bike. Before I labour the point too much, I've been riding this Africa Twin in a bunch of different environments. I've done some boring 4-hour motorway commutes on it. I've done some charging around the lanes, I've done some riding around tiny little single tracks, I've done off-road, proper gravel fire roads, slippy, stupid mud stuff that wasn't much fun. Ridden it to work, ridden it to the shops, ridden it to my mate's house, ridden it to the pub. I've tried to use it all the time because I think that's what it's for. This isn't a bike I'd ever buy to tuck in the garage and pull out for my Sunday ride. I wouldn't pull it out for that little holiday or that blast. But if I was looking for a bike that I was going to ride every single day, I was going to spend money on that instead of spending money on a car, actually I think that thing's quite high up my list. It does everything and doesn't ever annoy you. I think that's a good thing on any motorcycle. Now, as I've ridden the Africa Twin, there's some highlights and some lowlights. I'll go through the lowlights first, the Grumpy Chris niggles. One, that switch gear on the left-hand side, it's too many buttons. I'm sorry. Maybe someone more intelligent than me can cope with that many buttons, but I found the skipping tracks for the music good. When I found the indicators, they were good, but most of the time I pressed 3 other buttons first. A couple of features are useful, but for me it was just a little too complex on that switch cube. The screen, there was one other thing I remember, it was the screen. Most adventure-y, touring-y bikes that have got an adjustable screen, you can do it with one hand. This, it's 2 separate clips and you can sort of jack it up half at a time, but it's not a nice clean flick up, flick down That feels like Honda could have done a better job than that. These people are very, very clever. Sort your screen out. And that is kind of it for my niggles. What Honda's done with this Africa Twin is they've sort of bucked the trend a bit. While everyone else has been pushing more off-road, more extreme, more adventurous-y adventure, I think Honda's taken a look at what most people actually do with an adventure bike and gone, we're going to take 20mm suspension travel off of it, we're going to put a 19-inch front wheel instead of the 21, we're going to make the seat height lower, and we're going to make a phenomenal road-going adventure bike that will take on a couple of gravel trails. And actually, good idea, because it's all the better for it. The old Africa Twin was a great bike. It could never quite match the more extreme twin-cylinder adventure bikes for off-road ability, so Honda's played to their own strength. They built something aimed at what people are actually going to use it for. I got really distracted there. The man holding the camera just started doing this. It's because it's raining again. It has rained a lot today, it has rained a lot this winter, which is why we shot this in the rain. The reality is you're going to be riding in the rain. Again, easy. Africa Twin is confidence inspiring. It's really well balanced. I found it quite easy to maneuver, to chuck around, to do U-turns on. Again, it's just a really good middle of the road bike. While they're updating the Africa Twin to make it more roady, they have given the engine some attention. So the CRF 1100 gets a bit more torque, a bit more mid-range power, a little bit more kind of shove, a little bit more urgency. And even with the dual clutch transmission, which in my experience kind of always masks the engine a little bit, it always gives you a slight feeling of a rubber throttle cable, like an elastic band. Even with that, it does still feel like it picks up and goes a bit quicker, especially off the throttle while you're trickling along at walking pace. That crack, it does shove forward with a bit of urgency. It will wheelie, just, if provoked. And then also when you're passing lines of traffic, I found even in full automatic, not even in the sport automatic mode, just snapping the throttle open and charging past stuff, it goes. It doesn't ever feel like you're kind of willing the gearbox to downshift. So yeah, good shove from that new engine. I have done lots of boring motorway miles on this bike, and I have to say, that Apple CarPlay Dash, it trumps everything else. You don't need all these manufacturer designed, clever, interactive connectivity systems. I've used lots of them now, and they're always quite good, but none of them quite matches up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which is exactly why car manufacturers have finally realised that and have just started putting that stuff in. To see it on a bike properly working at last, very happy about that. I can make phone calls, I can change my music, I can put my maps up. I know how it all works because I know how my phone works, so I know how the dash works. That's gold for me. I didn't have to learn anything on there. And it meant that on a 4-hour motorway journey, I could phone loads of my mates and bore them to tears and annoy them while I was riding. Bonus. Testing and reviewing bikes like this, by which I mean I ride it and tell people what they should think about it, always seems wrong to me. You might have a different opinion. And especially with something like this, an adventure bike and an adventure touring bike, there's so many things on it. There's so many things that would have irritated the hell out of you that don't bother me. If you're 6 foot, I can't tell you what the wind protection is at 6 foot. But I can tell you what it felt like to ride and how it fits in the world of motorcycles. It's definitely not at either end of the spectrum, this one. It's not a super gnarly off-roader. It's not wild Pikes Peak, multi-strada, road-going super sports adventure bike. This couldn't be more middle if it tried. And that I think is its biggest strength and its biggest weakness. It just does everything well, doesn't do anything too extreme. And you know what? I think if you're someone who just wants a bike to get on and ride all the time and use regularly, you wouldn't go far wrong with one of these. But don't take my word for it. Go and have a test drive on one. And yeah, send us a message, tell us what you think. I wish I could make being dependable sound sexy, but it isn't. It's never going to set your pants on fire. It's never going to frighten you. It's a really, really good middle of the road bike. And that's what I look for in a motorcycle. Oh, I'm going to be in trouble for that one.